Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm super excited to have two incredible women this morning on Data is Love, Syra Rao and Regina Jackson, to talk about their organization, Race to Dinner, in a documentary that they just released a couple of weekends ago called Deconstructing Whiteness. And we may also talk about the events of this past weekend and our responsibility as folks leading organizations and doing equity work. But before we do all of that, I'm just hoping, Syra and Regina, if you can say hello. And I really want to hear from you all about what led you to create Race to Dinner and when did you create it?
Okay, well, Syra ran for office against a longtime incumbent white woman, and Syra's whole platform was anti racism. So every time she would have a speech or a talk or a fundraiser or whatever, white women would line up around the block to talk to Syra. And what they wanted to say was, not me. I'm not racist. And this went on all during her campaign. And I joined Syra's side because of a couple of incidents that said, I have to change. And a white friend of mine said, I'm done with Syra. She hates white people. But if you can set up a lunch with her, I'd love to go to lunch with her. And take it from there, Syra.
Yeah. So, the straw that broke that Karen's back was my referring to Beto O'Rourke as a white savior. There's always something banal that breaks the back. And so I said to Regina, I'm not running. I lost. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't have to court white people's votes. But hey, how about this? I've got a list of white ladies who've asked for similar lunches and dinners. I'll do it. Let's bring them in. I'll do it as long as you come with me. We did it. That first dinner, full, white woman crying, angry, storming around the table, and Race to Dinner was born. I do want to flag one thing apart. Our documentary is called Deconstructing Karen, but it might as well be called Deconstructing Whiteness because Karen is whiteness. So there you have
Sorry
it.
about that.
That's all
Sorry
right.
about that.
That's all right. It's all the same stuff.
Okay, so your documentary, which I feel super lucky to have seen with you, Syra, last year, right? Preview viewing, is like one instance of a race to dinner, right? And why? Okay, I have a lot of different questions, but like, why only white women? Why not other women of color, other non-Black POC? And why pair? Why pair with a Black woman, right? Because I feel like a lot of times what we're hearing people say is it's the work of non-Black people of color or white folks to do this work on their own. So yeah, if you can help us understand like how you've set this up and the rationale behind it.
We're modeling, Syra and I are modeling the work that has to happen. I had at the Deconstructing Karen, one of the comments was from a Jewish woman, and she said something about, the Jews have been persecuted. I'm like, we don't need an oppression Olympics. There's enough hate to go around. So when are we going to come together, okay, as people who are non-white and do the work? Right now, it's set up to divide and conquer. We're all fighting for scraps.
Yeah, I mean, that's really it, Aparna. Sort of the macro piece of this is the divide and conquer. White supremacy depends on, Black, Asian, Latino, Indigenous folks not organizing together. And so by Regina and I doing this work together, we are in 100% solidarity. In every single dinner, a white woman tries to pit us against each other. And at every single dinner, I talk about my institutional anti-Blackness. So this work doesn't happen. This coming together doesn't happen unless everyone acknowledges the bullshit that we've been trained into, right? So we need to, Aparna, you and I need to acknowledge how we have been trained to be anti-Black. What does that look like? It's the ecosystem of white people being racist towards us being racist towards ourselves and each other in our own communities, and employing anti-Black racism. Until and unless we're willing to do that, there is no coming together. But it's not either or. I mean, white supremacy is not the elephant in the room. It's the room. It's the moon. It's the sun. It's the air. Lots of these conversations need to be happening. We're not saying Indian folks don't need to come together and have our own conversations about casteism, classism, colorism, anti-blackness. This just we're just two people, and we get asked this all the time. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? You know what? Do you want to send us $1 billion, and we're happy to try to set up stuff for everybody? But you know what? You fuckers don't even send us $5,000 to the dinners, and we know how much white women are making in DEI work. So this is just two people trying to actually circumvent the divide and conquer model, and we're modeling it. Are we doing it perfectly? Absolutely not. Should other people do other things? Sure. Have dinners. Have dinners. We want everyone to have dinners.
All right, noted. We will have more dinners. Okay, you just said, like how much money white women are making doing like quote unquote DEI work, right? And I would hate to not bring up what's been happening in the country in Syra. Like you're tracking, I feel like you're tracking all of it all of the time. And it's not, this weekend was horrific, but I feel like it's every weekend, right? And we're in this cycle where something really horrible happens, and all of the DEI influencers come on LinkedIn and they say, well, take care of Black people, take care of Asian Americans, take care of whatever, group was targeted. And nothing really changes. Nothing changes substantively. And so I'm curious, like, what would you, what would you have people in workplaces specifically doing? Because I don't think that these horrible things are happening in community and, like workplaces are safe. Like work is not safe.
I think number one, stop picking on Black people. We are the scapegoat in this country in every environment. Stop. I have a woman principal that we work with, and they hired a new young Black male in their organization. And she said it didn't even take a week, and the white teachers were coming forward with complaints about how he did this and how he did that. Leave Black people the hell alone, okay? Now, if you want to ask, what can I do to help you? What can I do to make this environment safe for you? You'll be told. Other words, leave us the hell alone.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I would add, DEI work is not anti-racism work as it's practiced right now. DEI work is not anti-whiteness work. DEI work is not anti-colonial work. And so, airdropping a bunch of Black and brown folks into a highly white colonized space is really dangerous for us. And it's actually really violent. And if you don't actually and if you don't have more than just a couple token people of color who are paid to actually uphold your bullshit, it's not safe. It's worse. Then keep it all white. Like this whole, I'm gonna fight for a seat at a colonized white supremacy table. No thanks. No thanks. So how do you make it safe? Step the fuck down and let Black and brown people take over and have some actual power, not tokenized people, but actual power. Because it's not working otherwise. I mean, we had a woman come to our Deconstructing Karen premiere who's in a very big position of power at a company that shall remain unnamed. And she said the amount of money we've spent on DEI at our company over the past 2 years is, upwards of 6, if not 7 figures. And this $15 movie ticket moved the needle for me more in 75 minutes than that. So that should tell you what's happening in DEI spaces.
Well, yeah, and I just have to say this because that's who I am. But I think white women need to recognize that all the gains they have made have been on the backs of Black people. Black people are the ones who marched, who were murdered, who did the work for the civil rights movement that gave white women an opportunity to move ahead. So reach down and bring some Black people with you.
And get out of the way. Like that actually requires you to get out of the way, like white women are the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action. So let's not forget that.
This is having me think about every year, I'm sure both of you know about this, McKinsey partners with Lean In, and they come out with this report. It's called Women in the Workplace every year. right? It's like a real splashy report comes out in the fall. And every year, somewhere like in an asterisk, byline, reference section, is one rule specific piece of data which says white women are the least likely to support the advancement of any other demographic group.
Mm-hmm.
And just with everything that's happened this past weekend, and in particular the shooting in Buffalo and the conversation about replacement theory, right? This idea that white folks are afraid that people of color are going to take over their country, right? Which is not their country to begin with. Um, Also has me think about these dynamics that show up at work, right? White folks are actually really afraid of stepping down for things that they believe they've singularly won. And I see a lot of that gatekeeping happen with our clients, with our colleagues, where they'll say, I've worked really hard to be X role in this company. Why should I be the person? Why should I be the person stepping down? Why should I do that? So why should they do that? Why should they step down?
Well, here's the deal. From these dinners that we've been doing for 3 years now, we know that white women love to, number one, center themselves. Number one, everything is about me. White women love to get in their feelings. Well, you made me, or I feel, you know what? Your feelings are between you and the universe, okay? God, whatever you want to call it, it has nothing to do with me, okay? So stop being self centered, stop focusing on yourselves. And if you're really going to be an accomplice, I'm not even going to say an ally, do the inner work, which says, there is no change without pain. So, yeah, there's going to be some pain. But if you really want to do this work, it's more about you doing the work to do the things that you need to do to make changes in the US. So, stop centering on yourself and center on the work.
And then I would add to that, I mean, like that framing Aparna is really analogous to the suffragette movement.
Mm-hmm.
And white women killing themselves. By the way, black and brown women kill themselves to help white women get the right to vote. Like the 19th Amendment didn't. Regina and I wouldn't have gotten the right to vote at that time.
Yeah.
Um, and so everything is viewed through a gender lens. It's just strictly gender oppression. So it's white women against white men, right? So as soon as they become a girl boss and they get theirs, nothing else matters. Who have they stepped on? Who have they stepped on to get there? Every person of color, black, brown, men, and women, every person of color to get there. So sure, if you are fine with that, and you're like, I got mine, I'm a girl boss now, and I'm now, sort of on par with the white man, and I'm not going to give it up, then that's fine. You're a known open white supremacist. Then that's fine. If you're comfortable with that, if you are unwilling to see how you have stepped on everybody else below you,
Mm-hmm.
everybody except for white women and white men, then that's fine. Then you live with that. But then you're not on the right side of history. Here's the problem with white people, white women and white men. Everyone wants to be on the right side of history until you realize what it requires of you in the present, which
Yep.
means giving up some shit to get
Yep.
liberation. That's what you get on the other side is liberation. And we had, true story, 3 days after the white terrorist attack last year of January 6th, white people called it an insurrection. It was a terrorist attack, right? Regina
Mm-hmm.
and I foolishly had a race to dinner in real life. This is, before we even were vaccinated, with 10 white women who were the leaders in Colorado business and nonprofits. I'm not going to even name some of these companies and organizations that they're heads of, but everyone should be deeply afraid that these women run these
Mm-hmm.
things. And we had a white woman, we brought up the suffragette thing. And we had a white woman say, well, I mean, come on, first it's our turn and then it can be yours. She said the quiet part out loud, which I appreciate it, right? So the white women who are saying, why should I have to step out of the way? That's what you sound like to us. Exactly. That's what you sound like to us. Get over your fucking selves. We're women too. We are women too. They also forget that we are also women. They'll say things like, well, we're women and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so are we. We understand the concept of being a woman.
I'm laughing, like I also want to cry because there's a version of that conversation that I think so many women of color have had. And it's one that I had probably, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where I was invited to some real, like, fancy, like women professional leaders thing in someone's like really fancy penthouse. And a couple of women of color said, hey, like this room doesn't look like Seattle. This room does not look like Seattle. It's very white. And one of the women in this group said something very similar, Syra. She said, well, it was a lot whiter a few years ago, so aren't you glad that we invited you?
Oh, no.
She
Don't you
actually
do that.
said, aren't you glad? Like, aren't you glad that
No.
we invited you? And in the room was one of the, I think she is the first Latina Supreme Court judge in the state of Washington. She was like, I'm sorry, excuse me. And I think it made for not only just a really rough evening for everybody else that was there, but guess what? Like none of us were invited ever again.
Well, no, you wouldn't.
Literally none of us were invited ever again to this gathering.
That's one of the things that me and Syra don't worry about. We don't worry about what white people think. Okay. I put on LinkedIn last week that Syra had posted the video of me saying that reverse racism isn't a thing. And some white dude came over and he said, well, if you want to you have to be concerned about feelings. I said, you know what? Black people have been afraid of hurting white people's feelings for over 400 years now. We're done. If your feelings get hurt, they get hurt. Deal with it like we deal with our feelings and our children's. And not only that, but them being physically assaulted and physically. My little 3-year-old granddaughter, we watched Cinderella and she said she wished she was white. 3.
Mm.
That's how soon it starts.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, LinkedIn, I've just started posting on LinkedIn because I'm dabbling in all these social media platforms. And I gotta say, the whites of LinkedIn are a separate kind of like lunacy, because it goes to show that DEI is not working, because at least you can kind of have these conversations without people being super 101 on Instagram or Twitter. TikTok, I'm not on TikTok. My understanding is you can also have these conversations there. There's some semblance of understanding. These people have gone batshit crazy with, all white people and this and that, as if aren't white people embarrassed, honestly? Like this woman who said that to you guys in Seattle, like how embarrassing, how pathetic. And how embarrassing. Like I would be, maybe that's why they don't want to be called white, because it's embarrassing to be white. I'd be embarrassed to be called white, to be white, like to act like this.
Yeah, I don't think that they were embarrassed.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think that they were embarrassed.
The reality. They're acknowledging the reality and they're saying this is the way it is, and if you don't like it, too bad. Is essentially what they're saying.
I mean, I think that, well, like she literally said that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that gets said a lot at work, which is why, when Sarah, I think you're right. Like the community on LinkedIn, under the guise of professionalism, really stays away from like real conversation about what's happening in the world. And like, by the way, when something like a mass shooting happens aimed towards one really specific community, right? Like we don't even have to guess. The person in this instance was live filming it as if it's a video game, and streaming it to like a gaming platform, and also streaming it to a gaming platform. That's what Twitch is. We don't recognize that the PTSD that stems from it lasts months and months and months. And so, yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about, like white folks, but like as people of color, like what's, I want to know, like what's our role as non-Black people of color? And how do we like actually truly support Black folks at work, and like of course then it stems to like how do we support Black folks in community as well.
By talking about our anti-Blackness, by calling it that, anti-Blackness. So if you've got white supremacy in a hierarchy, this is not
Mm-hmm.
this is not hard. Everyone's pretending that this is hard and this is complicated. It's not. It's very simple. If you've got white supremacy, you got to have something at the bottom. What's at the bottom? Anti-Blackness, and white supremacy, and everyone is in between. So it's not support. We have to stop using this language. Getting in the fucking fight. This ally stuff. It's not ally. It's getting in the fight and calling it what it is, which is our anti-Blackness. Playing along, being shitty to Black people, sitting in rooms where people in boardrooms. I used to work on Wall Street. I worked at Cleary Gottlieb, Steen and Hamilton on Wall Street. I used to be a fancy lawyer. I was terrible, but I used to be a fancy lawyer. And I would sit in rooms where people would speak in coded, it's not coded, ghetto, bad schools, dangerous. Did I ever say anything? No. Did I ever say anything? No. What did that mean? I was participating and actively upholding anti-Blackness and white supremacy. Did I say, but that hurt me too. Did I say anything when they made jokes about Indian people and Asian people and terrorists? No, because I would have been fired. Not fired. I just would have been yanked off a partner track.
Blackball. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I always say to people, you know what? White people know you're not white. They know. So quit pretending that you are, because white people know. And Black people, we know. I said to Syra the other day, she was talking about South Asian anti-Blackness. And I said, I think it's because it falls too close to home. And she said 100%, because you can take an Indian person and they can be confused as a Black person at any moment. And that's the issue.
Our proximity, by the way, our imagined, perceived proximity to whiteness will not save us. So true story, I was a third-year law student at NYU working at the U.S. Attorney's Office on Tuesdays in the fall of 2001. And so I was coming up the stairs to the building of the World Trade Center when everything happened, right? I went from being model minority to having people call if you see something, say something, if I was riding the subway with my backpack. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my perceived adjacency to whiteness did not save me. It has not saved plenty of South Asians who've been beaten and murdered. It has not saved folks from getting bombed in their temples and their places of worship. So that's my answer, Aparna, is we have to actually stop acting like white people. Because first of all, we're not white people, so the whiteness doesn't protect us. And we are causing harm. We are actively causing harm to Black people and ourselves and other people of color by pretending that that some adjacency to whiteness is going to save us.
Yeah. I think of that a lot. The proximity to whiteness is not going to save us. In the last couple of years, I've just seen this incredible influx of, in particular, South Asian, East Asian women and becoming DEI practitioners, and talking about, all of the harms that they've experienced at work. And they're people that come typically from a lot of privilege, and they're the people that grew up, in India or Singapore, somewhere else in Southeast Asia with house help and a driver and going to fancy schools, and then they came to the States. And I think that they realized that they're not white, right? Like, I think that they realized that. Luckily me, I kind of looked like a mixed race kid as a teenager. And so I already got all of that. In my teen years, I got fired from a barista job the day after 9/11 because, I was like in high school, like sophomore year in high school, getting fired from like a really stupid barista job in a small Illinois town because the owners knew that we had immigrated from the Middle East. And she was like, well, I'm worried that you might be a terrorist. And I'm like, well, I'm worried that I'm like 16 years old, like now without a job. So all of that said, I do want to talk about the documentary that you've made, and where can we watch it? Where can we watch it? what's the right format? Because everybody needs a checklist, right? Everybody needs them to have this like order of operations. So yeah, how can we watch it? Where can we watch it? We who should we be watching it with?
Go ahead, Cy.
Okay. So, we'll just be honest here. This movie could have been put out last year, and the director,
Mm-hmm.
producer, who's made a lot of documentaries, this is a great movie. I mean, it's a really well done, beautifully done movie. And she hit the wall. All the gatekeepers are white. Everyone got up in their feelings who saw it, like majorly up in their feelings who saw it. And so it is not lost on us that it took a very prominent, prestigious international film festival to pick up the movie first. So Hot Docs in Toronto was the first film festival to pick it up, and all the other film festivals that we've been invited to have been international. We'll leave names out, but we've actually been blackballed by prestigious film festivals in the US. And so now we've been invited back to Hot Docs Ted Rogers Theater for a limited theatrical run. So starting June 24th, if anyone wants to come to Toronto, you can actually come see the movie in the theater, and for a week. And then after that, we're looking for US distribution. We've got a ton of interest, but it's going to take the rare person, white or person of color token, who is willing to say, like, okay, I can get past my feelings. I'm going to do something brave here and have this movie go forward. We can tell you with a ton of certainty, this movie only had 2 screenings in Toronto, and the amount of attention and the amount of traction it's gotten has been huge. People will watch this movie 100%. So right now, Canadians, if you're in Toronto, you can come at the end of June. Until then, it's on hold. If anyone watching or listening happens to know Gwyneth Paltrow or Amy Schumer or Sandra Bullock, who wants to come in and put their white woman stamp of approval on this movie, so Netflix or HBO Max will feel very good about letting it live on their platform, great. But until then, you can reach out to Regina or I, and let us know if you want to do a screening in your city at a movie theater or a museum, or if your company wants to do a screening. We have a whole spreadsheet now because we've gotten a lot of people asking. We are going to be moving in that direction at some point in the future. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Let me just point out, just so that we're clear, we do not have distribution in the USA because nobody wants to hurt white women's feelings. Now, is that a bunch of nonsense or what? Just total white nonsense.
The irony.
If you look at the documentaries, for the most part, with exception, the documentaries on these platforms, just take a look at what they're showing. It's all touchy-feely, and when anything deals with race, it's all white savior shit.
Well, I was just going to say, like, maybe y'all should have made a documentary about white folks, like, stealing a lot of money, because I may or may not have watched a half a dozen documentaries on that specific topic, like young white woman, older white man, lots of white people. I mean, I feel like that's the genre. Like, you could have definitely gotten your documentary on Netflix if it was about theft.
Well, see, we want to talk about real stuff that has impact. That, I've got Black kids out there and Black grandkids out there. It needs to be better for them. They shouldn't have to deal with the same bullshit I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I 100% agree. And I want to know, before we let you all go and wrap for the morning, if someone wanted to host a race to dinner, are you all still doing them? Yeah. What does that look like?
So we have a couple scheduled for Seattle, Vancouver in September, October, Toronto next month. Regina just found out someone in Chicago has reached out. So yeah, just if you go, there's contact information at our website. Awesome. Just fill out the form and we can get you in the queue.
And how many people can come to the dinner? Is there a number?
8 white women and Syra and I.
Okay, private audience with Syra and Regina.
I'm sure that's what everyone wants.
Sign up. I feel like that's an act of allyship, right? Like, if you wanna put your ally badge on your shirt or your office door, then I think like for me, the call to action is work your networks, get the movie screening in the US in an easier format than reaching out to the two of you, right? And
Mhm.
host a dinner, have these conversations. And they are really, really hard. They're
And this
really
is
hard.
lifetime work. This is
Yeah.
lifetime work. You don't check it off and move on. You will be dealing with your own internalized racism, and then you start talking to other people in
Hmm.
your network.
Yeah. So I'm gonna commit to doing both whenever possible. I cannot wait to do a screening for my friends and colleagues in Seattle and sending lots of white women your way for hard conversations. Thank you both so
Thank
much.
you, Parna.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's so important for these conversations to be happening on LinkedIn because our professional personal lives are not separate, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, we need to do better. So thank you. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back next week. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.